Hi, this is One Last Midnight, and I have kind of a weird idea. And I've been talking about this over the last couple videos of Astroneer, and I kind of wanted to take a moment to maybe refine it and present it to you guys in a way that maybe we could start a discourse and possibly present it to the developers. So there's a problem with research. I think we're all aware that there's a problem with research currently right now. The whole idea of random research is not really the best idea. And I've floated the idea in the past couple of videos that maybe research should be something along the lines of some sort of linear tree, or at least at a certain point is some sort of tree structure that maybe is not linear, but can be branched out in different areas. So I'm going to present to you my concept, and it is solely just a concept. It is my own personal opinion. But what I'm hoping is that we start a conversation that we could possibly refine this concept down and present something to the developers to help improve the game. I mean, one of the reasons why they put it out into pre-alpha, and they stated this in their live streams, is that they wanted the community to come back and present them with ideas and help them develop a game that is going to be incredible. I already think the game is absolutely incredible, but there's this one little nagging piece that I think really needs to be refined a little bit. And while the developers say that they are mainly an exploration game, I challenge that concept because they are truly an exploration slash crafting game. Crafting is already in the application. So you have to craft solar panels, you have to craft a myriad of stuff, whether it's on your back or whether it's on the printer or whether it's on the vehicle bay. But you're constantly making items. So this concept of research is twofold. It's really being able to unlock specific items that you can craft that will allow you to craft another scale of items. So let's go back. Why do I think that this should be linear? Well, you've got to go back to research to begin with, the very concept of research. And let's take the wheel, for example. I'm sure that the wheel way back when wasn't even a wheel. It was a group of guys that had stuck down some logs and were pushing heavy objects over the logs. And that idea then turned around and progressed, which was, okay, well, how about we cut this log and into a thinner piece and maybe put a hole through it. And here's an idea where you got a wheel. And then somebody had to come up with an idea of, okay, so I've got a wheel. Wheel doesn't do me any good. I have to make some sort of axle and add another wheel. And then you've got this idea of, okay, I've got two wheels on an axle, but what do I do with that? And then somebody had to come up with an idea of a frame to put that axle on, and so on and so on and so on. So you progress till you get to a cart, maybe a handheld cart that you're pulling with two wheels on the back and an axle, to a four-wheel cart, which some beast of burden is pulling, and then on and on and on, right? Excuse me. So that's how I see research progressing. So how could research progress in Astroneer? I think pretty much along the same lines. And how would we go about implementing that? That's a big key, because I think we want to keep the current interface. I like the idea of a no dialogue interface. It's beautiful. It's actually so crystal clean that you don't need a manual to figure it out. Just a few hints here and there, and you've got the game. You understand how to use the game. Well, we can already use some of the existing mechanics inside of Astroneer to help facilitate this change in research and this change in crafting. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to walk you through this wild concept. And what I would love from you guys is your feedback. Now, if it's negative, that's great. You're going to turn around and say, I don't like the idea. That's fantastic. Here's what I'm challenging you with. Instead of just saying, I don't like the idea, clarify that remark. Say, I don't like that idea because of this, and maybe add some more detail to it. Because with that conversation, with that type of dialogue, we can start refining this idea into maybe a piece of functionality that could possibly be implemented inside of the game. Something that could be unique to the game and and something that would be enjoyable for everybody. Because currently right now, this random idea of opening up quote unquote chests and just pulling out a random item doesn't really work specifically for me. You could get a bad initial planet and wind up spending hours and hours just looking for basic items. And I did that the other day on a live stream. I had a horrible roll on a planet, and it took me over an hour and a half just to get some basic stuff up and running. And then yesterday on my live stream, I got an awesome roll on a planet, and within an hour I had almost all of the research. So this concept of randomness in these chests is just not working. I don't feel like I'm doing anything other than rolling a dice and hoping that I get what I get. So let me present to you my idea, and I'm looking forward to hearing your responses. Okay, so here's the concept. You only start with two blueprints, the tethers and the research building. And so why the tethers? Well, the tethers should be obvious, right? The tethers are going to help you explore, and they're going to make sure that you survive because you need oxygen, right? And the research building, because you need the research building because it's going to, you need to use that to build absolutely everything else. So what's the next part of it? How would research work? But before we ask that question, what I'm thinking is how are items and buildings built? And currently right now, it's way too easy. You find the research and then you put in a couple things and that's it, it's done. I say that they add an enormous amount more complexity to building and crafting items, whether it be a building or whether it be an individual item, with two exceptions. The items that are on your backpack that have been researched, and base extensions. Base extensions are going to remain one resin, and then the items on your backpack are going to remain one resource, but as long as you've already researched it. Okay. So what do I mean by more complexity? Well, let's take the current research building. So the current research building is 2 compound. My suggestion is that if the goal is exploration, then let's force people to start exploring right off the bat. And I would say that the research station is not 2 compound, which is usually right next to the base. I would say it needs to be 2 malachite, 1 compound, or 1 resin, or some other weird combination. Doesn't matter. But make it 4 items. Make it 6 items. I don't care. But make it some combination of items that's going to cause you to have to go out and find some stuff. And even better, it could be random every time you start a new game. And that way you've got better replayability. Every time I'm landing I'm starting a new game, it's not going to be the same thing. I don't know the recipe to build the building, right? So you've got tethers, go explore, go find those resources. So how would research work under my idea? My idea is that it'd be linear, just like the real world. You've got to find one thing to make something else, right? And I'm thinking that you have major groups of items so that you can unlock specific research items, where the first major group would always be resources. The first thing you're going to need to build anything else is you're going to need to be able to get the resources being copper and aluminum and all that stuff. The research would be time-based. Let's say, for an example here, to research the resources main group, it would take 15 minutes. And that 15 minutes can be reduced by going and finding other resources to help speed that timer up. So let's say I go find some malachite, or I go find some laterite, or I find some compound or some resources. I can put that in, and that'll take away N number of seconds. It'll take away 15 seconds or 20 seconds or whatever. That gets me out. That gets me moving. That gets me doing something while those 15 minutes are gone. And you're saying 15 minutes, well, that's a long time. It's actually not. If you think about it, you're already spending 15 minutes away from your base exploring. So 15 minutes is nothing. What about power? Because right now everything's relying on power. The research station is relying on power. Well, I say eliminate it. Make it like the trade platform. It doesn't consume power. It becomes time-based, and so you don't have to worry about, do I have to power it up to do the next best thing? Okay, so how would you select these major research groups and research items? I think that the research station now functions like the printer, where it has the left and right arrow for you to be able to cycle through research groups and research items. It's got a ghost item of the research that you're trying to research. So let's say resources. It's got a bunch of little resources as a ghost item. It's got a little progress bar timer thing, so you can see how much time is remaining on that particular research item. And you can drop resources on there to speed it up. Okay, so why resources first? Well, you got to understand, you've got to have a basic understanding of all the resources to be able to build anything else. So you've got to go out and you've got to find, you've got to figure out how to make copper. You've got to figure out how to make aluminum. You've got to research those items before you can go ahead and start building anything else. And so that's why I say resources should be the first thing that you have to accomplish for research. It's like example would be, you can't make anything out of metal if you didn't already discover what metal was first, right? Okay, so how do I get to like the specific research items? So I've researched resources. That's a major group. I've unlocked that major group. And now what happens is the specific items appear underneath that. And so you've got the ability to be able to cycle through with the left and right arrows. And maybe they have double left and right arrows so that you can jump from major group to major group. And the left and right arrows will cycle through each individual item one at a time. But then you have the items that you need to continue to research. I need to research copper. I need to research aluminum. I need to research iron, so on and so forth. You could also have some sort of indicator that'll let you know whether it's an icon or whether it's color. That'll tell you that I've already researched this, or this is locked, and this is the current research item. And there's, of course, there's a button on the bottom that says start research for whatever the selected research item is. And so what happens next? Well, once you research these things, then they can be printed in the appropriate area. So let's say you research the beacon. Well, that's printed on your backpack. So now it becomes available on your backpack to print. Or let's say you research the solar panel, the small solar panel. So that's another backpack item. Or the large solar panel, that would be on the printer, or a vehicle that'd be on the vehicle bay, right? So it goes to its appropriate location of where you can actually print it out. And printing it out is not as easy as just 4 compound or 4 aluminum or whatever. I could go back to the original, what I said is more complexity. It is various types of additional research. And maybe it's not just 4, maybe it's 6, maybe it's 8, maybe it's 10, maybe it's 12, whatever the case might be. And I think in the case of vehicles, it should be a little bit more complex than that. It should be, you've got to get tires, you've got to get a battery, you have to get something, a fuel tank. You've got to get the ability to have lights or whatever, right? So all of these things can be components that could be researched. All these things can be printed. All these things would be needed then to build the next available item, right? Make it easier, or not easier, make it more complex, make it more in depth. So what would change? Would anything else change? Yeah, sure. A bunch of stuff would change, right? No more random chests. The random chests have to be either something else, or they've got to go completely away. They can maybe still give resources, I don't know, or maybe they just get rid of them because there's no use for them anymore. The smelter would probably change into something like a refinery, where all these various different resources, like let's say rubber, or let's say whatever, glass, or something along those lines, could all be refined at the refinery. They need to rethink the trade platform, because once you've got the trade platform, you pretty much don't need to do anything else. You just need to put stuff in the trade platform, and you can get everything that you need to make your base, which is kind of weak, because that just really, once you get the trade platform, exploration pretty much just stops. They need to change the fuel condenser to be more like the smelter, where it requires resources and power to make fuel. And then it also can't be just limited to hydrazine. It needs to be, I'm going to make fuel. Let's just call it fuel, not hydrazine. Let's just say I'm going to make fuel from organic, or I'm going to make it from coal, or I'm going to make it from hydrazine crystals or something like that. So what am I thinking for major groups? I'm thinking that the major groups are resources, buildings, power, augmentations, vehicle survival. And then underneath that, you get the items that wind up appearing in there. Well, resources, it's copper, aluminum, iron. Buildings, it's printer, vehicle bay, refinery. Power, it's like small solar power, large solar, small turbine. Augmentation tools are in there as well. The vehicles, the survival, right? It's all in front of you, right? So, and much, much more. Break it down, refine it even smaller than that. Maybe you have vehicle parts. Before you can make a rover, you need to put these parts together to make a rover. It needs to be, like I said, a fuel tank, a battery, some lights, whatever. I'm trying to think of how I can have more components to make a piece, to make a rover, to make it a little bit more involved. So that I'm spending a lot more time on science and a lot more time on crafting, but also that's forcing me to get out into the world and explore and visit new locations. Maybe all this stuff can't be found on the Terran planet. Maybe you've got to go off to the barren planet to be able to get a specific item to be able to get to the next level. What else? So, you know, the example of gameplay would be I land on the planet, I find some resin, I start expanding my base, I create the research station placeholder, and then I go get some compound, I build some tethers, I go explore for the research station resources, whatever it's going to take to build the research station. I build the research station, and then I start my research on resources. And then I go roam around some more, and I start picking up stuff. And those things I deliver back to the research station to maybe speed up the timer. I don't know. Maybe you don't have to do that because as you're roaming around, you're going to find it. And then you start researching other major groups, right? Maybe I want to focus on vehicles first. I'm the guy that wants to focus on vehicles. I don't want this to be random and I get a vehicle. I want to focus on, I want to make that choice. I want to make the choice of augmentation tool. Maybe I want to work on my base first. Maybe I want to use the inhibitor to flatten out my base, or I want to color my base first. I want to do something else. I want to be able to choose the group that's important to me first and not have to worry about the randomness. And then you just continue to keep exploring and you continue to keep picking the research items that you want until you get to the point where you can leave the planet and go to another planet. And like I said, maybe these research items it's a step process. It is, you've got to work really hard to get the spaceship. Right now, you can only get the shuttle, and the shuttle only takes you 1 or 2 planets out. Or maybe it only takes you to the barren planet. And then you've got to work really hard to find the things that you need to get the spaceship so that you can go farther out into the solar system. So that's kind of my concept. I just wanted to thank you guys, and I really appreciate you listening to me ramble on about this. And let me know what you think. You know, put in the comments below what you think this concept of research and crafting would be like in Astroneer. Would it work for you? Wouldn't it work for you? You know, I'm thinking of all the other kind of survival type crafting games where it's not just research magically appears when you open up a chest and then it's very easy to create. You actually have to work at getting specific items to build something. It's not just one single thing to build a part. It's got the crafting part of this game has to be more in depth, which would then expand out the research part of this. That has to be more in depth. So that's what I'm thinking. So again, I really appreciate it. Thanks a lot, guys. We'll see you in the next episode. Bye-bye. Thanks for watching. Please remember to hit that like button if you like the video and subscribe to our channel so you can stay on top of all of our latest video releases. I release content almost every day. We'll see you guys soon. Bye.